Welcome to the webinar, you guys. I'm Jordan with the Maker Sales Book, and I'm super excited to get you started on your sales journey. I hope that you find value in these principles that I'm going to teach you. But let me tell you why you're here, okay? So you probably saw the ad that talked about how if you're spending money for ads, you're just burning money if you don't know how to handle customers when they get to you, or how it's really important to understand the buying motivations behind people, the psychology behind why people buy. If you're anything like me, you started woodworking because it was a passion, it was a fun thing that you loved to do, but it became a little bit of drudgery when you weren't able to make as much money as you want. Or maybe you're making some money, but you just want to be able to make a little bit more. Maybe you're closing 4 or 5 deals a month, but you'd like to close 7 or 8 or 9. That's really what I'm here to try and help you understand how to do. If you're feeling any pain and not being able to make money with woodworking, you're in the right place. I'm going to give you the sales principles that have governed my entire career and have made me hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of my 15 years in sales to be able to help you achieve similar results. Okay? So I'll give you a little bit of a brief history about where I'm coming from. Right? So I live in East Idaho. I've got a woodworking company, custom woodworking business. We primarily focus on dining tables and chairs, but we really do custom kind of whatever we want at this point. I can be pretty picky and choosy about the types of projects that I take on. My first full year in woodworking, I did $20,000 in sales, and something switched in my mind. I'll tell you what that thing was here in just a minute. But before that, I was basically a career salesman. I'd sold Cutco knives, was my first sales job. Then after that, I sold internet marketing. I was white labeling diet products and HCG and stuff for investors. Then I went to retail and I started selling power sports, motorcycles and snowmobiles and ATVs, and I did that for a few years. Then I sold insurance, opened an insurance agency, and then after that, I did. I went back to retail and I sold cars for 3 years before I was promoted to finance manager after I got my MBA. Finance manager is the guy in the office that signs paperwork with customers. So I was selling warranties and insurance products on people's cars. I was getting them approved for loans. And then after about 2 years of doing that, the owner's son decided that he wanted my job. So I got let go. And he wound up taking over. That was in October of 21. And then in October 21, just a few days later, I went back to work at the power sports dealership that I had left because I still knew all the guys there. We were still buddies. And so they took me back because they really wanted me back anyway because they knew I could sell. So I sold there for about 4, 5, 6 months, really unsure about the direction I needed to go in life. And then the Lord told me that I needed to do this. I was praying, trying to find out what to do. And this was the answer: start a woodworking business, which I was a little taken aback by. At this point, woodworking had only been a hobby of mine for 3 or 4 years. I'd only ever sold a couple of pieces. But I was like, that's all right, I like woodworking. I spent a ton of time watching YouTube woodworking channels, and I had sold a couple of things, so I was like, I can make this work. Now, like an idiot, when I started off, I thought, well, if you just make a good product, then the people will flock to you. That's what happens, right? I did not utilize any of my sales principles at all. My first full year as a woodworker, I made a total of $22,000. That was it, total. And that was gross. That was not net, okay? So my savings were just getting eaten up simply because I needed something to live on, and I definitely wasn't doing it with woodworking, okay? And something switched, something clicked in my mind. Right around May of 2023, May of 23 was when I decided to utilize all of the principles that I had learned. I said, you know what? Sales is sales. Sales works everywhere. Use the same principles that you've utilized and that you've understood your entire career. Just apply them to your business. So I worked on the right marketing. I found the right marketing guy because I needed to do that. I understood the value of paid ads so that I could get people in front of me, so that I could get leads in front of me. And then I started utilizing my sales principles that I had learned over my 15-year career. Stuff like objection handling, value propositioning, mirroring, all of the things that I knew helped customers gain trust and learned to like and appreciate me and what I was selling so that I could close more deals. Well, the first year or the first month that I did that, up to this point, my best month had been $4,000 or $5,000. First month I did that, we did $9,000. Next month I did 12. Next month I did 15. I continued to scale up my ad spend, but every single time a customer got in front of me, I was working on honing in my skills to be able to close more deals, to utilize the sales skills that I had learned over my career to be able to close more. I hired a guy, about 6 months later, hired another one. We moved into a commercial space, hired another guy after that. We moved into a bigger commercial space. From May of that year, May of 23 through December, we did $180,000 in sales. The following year, we did a total of $380,000. This year, we're on track. We're at about 320 so far in July. We're on track to do 600,000 or more. So I tell you all this not to brag, but so that you understand that my sales principles that I'm going to give you in this webinar, the stuff that you're going to learn right now, they hold timeless value, okay? They are important to understand the buying motives behind your customers, the people that are coming to see you for woodworking projects and for custom stuff, and why it's so important to gain these skills and to utilize these 3 principles that I'm going to give you in every single interaction with every single customer. All right? So I've got some notes over here. So if I look over here, it's just so that I can remind myself of the flow that I want to go. But so the first thing that I'm going to talk to you about is what a good deal actually is for customers. All right? If you've been in woodworking long enough, you've had this happen a couple of times maybe. Some guy will come in and he'll look at what you have to offer, or maybe you're doing a trade show or something. Maybe you're doing turned objects like bowls or tops or something like that, or rolling pins. Maybe you're doing full-on dining sets. But you get a customer in front of you and they'll ask, how much is that? And you'll say, oh, that's $1,000. And one customer will be like, whoa, that's way too much money. And then another customer will come by and say, how much is that? And you'll say, that's $1,000. And they'll say, whoa, what a bargain. What's the difference? The difference is how the customer perceives value and what it means to them. Their buying motivations are going to be different, right? So the first principle I need you to understand and that I want you to take away from this is that a good deal is not a number or a price. A good deal is a feeling. So often, woodworkers will start off their company, or even amateur salesmen will start off in their company, and they'll receive some sort of resistance from a customer, right? And the first impulse is to decrease your price. The first impulse is to say, well, if you think that's too much, let me see what I can do. Maybe I've got some wiggle room in it, right? But all you're doing when you do that is you're devaluing what you offer in the customer's mind. If you can automatically take some money off in a customer, or off of the product that you're trying to sell, then that customer thinks that it's not really worth the price you were actually asking to begin with. They need to feel that the value that they're getting exceeds what they are paying for. Does that make sense? They need to understand that there is more value in what you're offering in your product than they could possibly pay for. Which brings me to the second principle. Okay, so the second principle that I want you to understand is very closely tied to this. Nobody in the history of buying anything has ever purchased solely based on price. Everyone has only ever purchased based on value. Okay? Now, to understand this, we need to understand the basics of any financial transaction. Okay? So if I've got $1, let's say I've got $1 in my pocket and I really want a candy bar. Okay, I've got $1 in my hand, I want a candy bar in this one. I'm gonna walk into the grocery store and I've got my $1 and I see all of them listed down there for $1. That might be a bit of a far stretch here. It seems like candy bars are at least like $1.50 these days, but let's just follow this example for argument's sake. So $1, I want my candy bar. And I look down on the bottom here and I see all of these candy bars. And this one says it's cost $1, right? So I grab it and I look at it. Maybe it's got nougat. Maybe I'm not a fan of nuts and it's got some peanuts in it or whatever. I think in my mind, that's only worth 50 cents. I'm going to put that down. I'm going to keep my $1, right? I go over to the next one. The next one's got a little bit nicer. You know, maybe it's closer to what I want, but I still only think it's worth 75 cents. I'm going to keep my $1. Put that down. Now here's where it gets interesting. If I see a candy bar that in my mind is only worth $1, I'm still going to keep my $1. Why? Because people don't buy things of equal value to the money in their hand. Everyone is looking for something of greater value. I need to find a candy bar that in my mind is at least worth $1.01 to me in order for me to sacrifice my dollar. So we need to be able to give customers what they believe is worth more than the money in their pocket or their bank account or their wallet. Does that make sense? We're not out to create a product that's simply equal to the value of what it represents in the market. We need to create a product that the customer couldn't possibly pay enough for in their mind. They see a $1,000 table or a $3,000 table or a $5,000 table. We want them to think that is worth 10 grand and I'm getting a steal at 3,000. How do we do that? We do it through things like value propositioning, statements, trigger words, emotional connections. We help them see that we're not just selling a piece of furniture, we're selling a solution to a problem. We're selling a connection to a lifestyle. Okay? So that's one thing that we can do to drive the customer to see the value in what we sell. Okay, so again, principle one, a good deal is not a price or a number, a good deal is a feeling. Principle two, no one ever buys solely on price, they buy on value. Now, there is one exception to that rule, only one, and that is when the customer cannot tell the difference between your product and this product, then they'll buy the one that's cheaper. That's it. That's the only time a customer ever buys solely on price, is when they look at this and they say, yeah, I don't see any difference between these two, but this one's $5 cheaper, so I'm buying this one. Okay? Now, what we're trying to do in this is build value in the customer's mind. And there are many, many, many different ways to do that, many different ways to build value in a customer's mind. But the goal is to make sure that they understand that what they're getting is worth far more than what they're paying. Okay? So that's principle one. Principle two. The last principle that I'm going to touch on that I want you guys to understand and take away from this webinar, I want you to understand the value behind the first objection. Okay? The difference between presenting and selling is the objection. That's really the only thing. The first time a customer expresses resistance, that's when the sales process starts. Now, if you've been doing this at all, again, for any period of time, you have had people say, that's too much money, or I'm not sure I want to pay that, or that's outside of my budget, or I need to think about it, or I've got to run it by the wife, any number of different objections, right? And what have you said? If you're like the average salesperson or the beginning salesperson or the average woodworker, you probably didn't know what to say. You probably said something like, oh, okay, well, I'm always here, take my card, good luck, we'll talk to you later, right? The difference between presenting and selling is the moment that resistance comes. Anyone can present a product and 2 out of 100 people are going to buy it just because it's exactly what they've envisioned no matter what. A salesperson understands how to connect what the customer needs with the product they're selling, if it is in fact what the customer needs. So if someone reaches out to you for custom furniture, custom table, custom cabinetry, custom whatever, it is our job to say, this is the value of what I offer and how it connects to what you need. So understanding what the customer needs will help us connect that too. That's another sales principle that we can touch on another time. But the very first objection, the first sign of resistance, is when the sales process begins. Now, maybe you've got a thriving business right now, or a thriving business. Maybe you've got a business that's at least making money, and you're selling 2 or 3 dining sets a month, or maybe you sell cabinetry, maybe you're selling 1 or 2 kitchens a month, or whatever. The difference between a presenter and a salesperson is that salesperson can just get maybe another 1 or 2 deals per month. If your average dining set is $3,500 a month and you're only doing 4 or 5 of them, how much more money can you make if you can just close that extra 1 or 2? Would that finally be enough money for you to hire someone else to help in the shop? Would that finally be enough for you to be able to pay off that piece of equipment you bought a year ago but that just have been making the minimums on? Would that be enough for you to be able to say, I'm going to take the afternoon off and I'm going to go fishing with my kids? What I'm offering you today are these three main principles, okay? Again, that a good deal is not a feeling, or a good deal, is a feeling, not a price. That no one ever buys on price alone, they buy based on value. And that the real sales process begins at the first objection. These principles, if you let them govern everything that you do in your business, will help you close at least another 15, 20, 30%, 40, 50, 100% more, depending on how much you dive into them. Now, there's obviously many, many more principles to work on. Objection handling, what the customer is really saying when they're bringing up a price objection, how to handle a price objection, mirroring, value propositioning, value statement, marketing. There are so many different avenues within the sales paradigm that we need to understand in order to be able to close more of those deals. What I'm offering you today is a lifetime access to the Maker Sales Book training program. Now, my wife thinks I should be charging close to $8,000 or $9,000 for this program, and maybe one day I will. But since we're just getting off the ground, your price is $399. Now, when I say lifetime access, I mean lifetime access. As long as I can find sales principles and applications to the furniture industry, I'm going to be uploading a new training module every single week. That means at the end of this year, there's going to be more than 50 of these training modules, and because you're getting in now, you will have lifetime access to every single application of every sales principle that I understand now or will understand as I continue to evolve in my sales journey. I want you to have the lifestyle that you're after. I want you to be able to grow your business to the point that it is what you envisioned when you started this. Now, maybe that's just you alone in the shop. Maybe it's you with 2 or 3 guys. Maybe you're just managing. Maybe it gets you to the point that you can step away from your business entirely, have someone else manage it, and spend more time doing what you love. That's what I want for you. So this one-time offer, $399 for lifetime access to the Maker Sales Book training program. There's a link down below, so there's a button that you can click on. It's either here or it might be over there. I'm not sure. But there's a button that you can click on to get lifetime access to this. I want to see you. I want to meet you. I want to be able to have a conversation with you and know how I can help you best in your sales journey. So please click on it, join the program, and let's get you selling the way that you need to be able to close more deals and live the life you want.